What's going on, everybody? I did see some hiccups with the connection, so I don't know if we're going to get any buffering or whatnot today. But just wanted to throw that out there that I did see some connection issues when we were queuing up here. So if it drops off, don't be surprised. I guess Comcast is having some problems. What else is new? Am I right? Let's just be honest. So. How's everybody doing today? We got about 1.5 feet of snow last night, so that was fun. And then started out this morning with my computer acting up, so I didn't know if I was going to be able to stream, but we got everything back up and running. I think I had something up with a Windows update or something, but we are back up and running. It's been one heck of a Monday. That's all I'm going to say. It's for sure a Monday today, and being it's a Monday, I got my maw here. I'm using my blender bottle because it's bigger. But I'm also told by my friends that live a little down south that our weather up here is visiting them in Texas, and they're all freaking out. Freaking out over a little bit of snow. It's interesting. Tap a Waffle, hashtag sponsored. I am an affiliate of Maw, and I will recommend their stuff. I gave Doug a bottle. I gave Doug a thing of it for Christmas. This is my favorite right now. I like all their flavors, but if I had to pick one, it's their melon. But yeah. Anyways, where's Clara? Clara's in the house. It's been a stressful Monday, so I started one of these earlier. So I don't like having her around the smoke. So she's inside right now. It's been one hell of a day. We've had a lot going on today. So, anyways, but we will be doing a stream today, obviously, and on Wednesday. And I do want to let you guys know that next Monday, the 22nd, that stream is moved to the 23rd because we will be on our way back from Tennessee. So, meeting up with a friend of mine. We're going over some marketing stuff for TH3D, and we're also just meeting up because we haven't seen him in a while. And then we're also getting our puppy. So I don't have any new puppy pictures. Maybe Samantha has some, she can send them to me, but I don't have any puppy pictures right now to share. I'm trying to turn the cube on, but it looks like my browser session timed out, so I got to relog into Home Assistant to turn that back on. I do want to let you guys know that this is something that I just overlook because I never use it, is in the Easy Plug firmware. I know I have one somewhere here. There, in the Easy Plug firmware, there is a button that's for like a firmware update that calls back to the Tasmota URL. Don't use that. It's not going to like break your plug, but that's going to pull down a regular Tasmota binary, which doesn't have everything preset up in it. So the difference between our firmware for the Easy Plugs and the Tasmota vanilla, and you can run regular Tasmota on there if you're a more advanced user. There's information on that. But the difference between our version of Tasmota for the Easy Plugs and the standard one is our version has what's called the template to tell it how to communicate with the power monitoring. If you have the plus plug, the relay, what pin it's on, what pin the button's on, what pin the LED's on. That is all pre-set up in our firmware, along with on the plus, we also have the power calibration information pre-programmed into there. So if you do find yourself where you were being a little overzealous and click that update button, we did add a note, I think it was on Saturday, because it's when I first saw the report. I was like, people are clicking buttons they shouldn't. We did put a notice on there that if you are in the web UI, do not click that unless you're actually going to Tasmota. If you did accidentally do that, all you have to do is go to our help center. There's a link to all the Easy Firmware or Easy Plug firmware releases. You flash the what's called the minimal one and then the full one, and you'll be back on our firmware. So it's really easy to undo. But yeah, unless you're actually going directly to the regular Tasmota release, don't use that button. We're actually going to remove it. I don't know if I'm going to remove it. I might remove it because I'd rather, if people are going to update, they just do it where you upload the file. I don't really want to have a URL. I guess I could with GitHub. I haven't decided, but either way, we'll be doing change to that so it doesn't default to the Tasmota URL in the next firmware update. So he said, Ryan says he's got the plug-in running, but the graph you can generate is clunky F. Well, it depends on when it's reading. It only pulls every couple of seconds. And if you're feeding it into, the ideal thing to do is feed it into Home Assistant, and then you can have it track the usage. But what'll happen is, as your printer's cycling the heater on and off, you're going to have spikes up and down, and it's going to be kind of clunky because as you're printing, what'll happen is the bed is going to be cycling on and off, which is going to change the load. So if the plug took that snapshot of the current power draw when the bed was off, it's going to be lower. If it took it while it was on, it'll be higher. So you will get it like this. And then there is some power monitoring integration with the actual Octoprint Tasmota plugin. That's a community-driven plugin from a guy, I think it's Janelli, I think is his handle online. I'm going to pull up one of my Pi installations here that has a plug hooked up to it, which would be my, well, quite a few of them, but I know my Ender 3 has one over there. But the Tasmota plugin we're not coding that. That's a community-driven one. It's really good. He's been doing a lot of work on it. So why reinvent the wheel? But it does have like a graph. I know it has like a graph feature in there. And it is kind of clunky. That's not like our plug generated. That's just how the plugin is processing the data. So like I have a couple power monitoring things. Let me see if I can pull one up as an example, because I've got quite a few power monitoring plugs. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find, my dryer's got one on it, because I'm using the power monitoring terminate for our dryer is actually, I don't think I have that graphed out yet. Hang on, let me see. I know I'm logging it. I'm trying to see where I have a graph. Let me see. Sensor. Help if I spelled sensor right. Let me see. Server rack has one. Server rack, like amps here. So I can show you here. Let me pull that up on my screen and do a little share here. Server rack dot watts. Here, so if you pull your stuff into Home Assistant, let me switch this over. I'm just gonna make this full screen so you can see it. Move that out of the way. So if you pull like your Easy Plug into Home Assistant, you can have it pull the data pretty good, and then it logs it here. So like this is a plug that's on my server rack, so I can see how many watts it's pulling right now, which is 580. And then what's funny is you can see when it starts doing tasks, it kicks up. Like I have backups that kick off. I've got automations that kick off, and you can see where it spikes. So you can, if you pull into Home Assistant, you can start getting graphs to log your data. But the plug by default is just going to it has an aggregate of how much it's used and the current status. But if you want to get fancier with it, you would have to tie it in with something like Home Assistant, like this. So, but you can get graphs like this if you connect the plug to Home Assistant. They do work with Home Assistant, even with our firmware. It's got the MQTT support. So you can see there when the update interval is. I think I have this set for 15 or 30 seconds. I can't recall. I don't have it updating super quickly just because I really don't care. It really depends on your application. But I want to say it's 30 because you can see 19 seconds ago. Is it 30? Or maybe it's a minute. I'm not sure because I don't care how granular this is. I just want a rough idea of how much power I'm pulling off here. Yeah, it's 30 seconds. So, but anyways, you can do stuff like that. Home Assistant is an awesome tool if you're getting into home automation. Let's do what we're here for. We'll get rid of that tangent. I am seeing that the stream is complaining that it's not getting enough bits and bobs. So it looks like it's good enough though. How are you guys doing? You getting buffering? You good? Yeah, we did. Mac CJ did did say the template. So if you're a more advanced user and you're familiar with Tasmota, we did submit our template for the plug on the Blackadder site, Blakadder. So let's see. So Derek, as always, with the first question. He says, "Hey Tim, question: to print pure nylon filament, should I use Easy Mat or Easy PEI? Also, does Vision Miner work in nylon? Does the same apply to nylon CF?" You can use Easy PEI with nylon. You definitely are going to have to use the Vision Miner. Nylon doesn't really like to stick to many surfaces, and PEI is one of those. The Easy Mat's actually really good at sticking down nylon with no additional stuff, but you also got to be careful with nylon. Nylon can bond to different surfaces, so I would recommend the the Vision Miner. And yeah, the same stuff would apply to nylon with CF. That's, you know, got the fill in there. We've done a lot of nylon. I'm pretty sure Aaron's been using nylon on both our smooth Easy Flex and the textured ones, and the Vision Miner down there. So Vision Miner does work really well with nylon. It actually, I haven't found a filament that it does not work with. So let me see here. Let's see, Nicholas, why does a Creality board have more components on it than your Easy board? Just design choices. That's really all it is. Maybe they have, depending on how they did the layout, you can cut down components if you want, but they might have to have more. It's really all it comes down to is how it was designed. Frank Corey is asking, anybody here Chuck using an Easy ABL, or sorry, anybody here Chuck using a BL Touch and switch to the Easy ABL? I have the one that came with my Sova SV01. It's been nothing but trouble. I get better results without it. Think about trying out the Easy ABL. I had issues with my BL Touch on the Ender 5 Plus. It worked okay, but that also had a really long wire run, which the BL Touches are known for having interference issues, just because it's not a shielded wire. But maybe someone in the chat can chime in if they made that switch. Let's see here. Let's see. Questions? Nicholas, are you getting a new puppy? Yes, we are. I will be sure to show him off. His name is Remo. We're getting another shepherd. Matt says, I hope you're staying warm. What's up? Yeah, we are. I got a heater out in here. We're good. Let's see. What other questions? Here's another one. Dominic, I got an Ender 5 Pro with Easy Board, Easy ABL, solid mounts. Bed visualizer says that one corner X0Y0 is negative 2.50, while the opposite corner is plus 5.75. How can I fix this? Well, on the Ender 5, you do have that cantilever bed, so you could try printing. There's a lot of printable upgrades for that, where they clip onto the bearings, and it's like almost a shelf that kind of supports the bed. You could do that. I've also seen a lot of people, if you're obsessed with trying to get your bed as flat as possible, which isn't a bad thing, you don't usually need to do it because the ABL will compensate for that, but you will have more compensation that could throw off dimensional accuracy of your prints. So you could space it out with like washers between the solid mount and the carriage. I would not recommend putting washers between the solid mount and the bed because you could contact the heater PCB traces. But if you put them between the carriage plate, like underneath the solid mount, between the carriage plate and the solid mount, you'll be good. But I would probably print off one of those support arms, or two of them. It's usually two, and see how it looks after that, because you could just be getting sagging, which it sounds like it is. So your 0.575 in the back right, which is where it's actually supported, and 0, 0 is going to be the cantilevered end of it. So it would make sense that that's going to be further down than the one in the rear. So maybe all you need to do is print those arms out to support them. I know we've had a couple people ask us to print those for them here. So we have not done it to ours. I haven't had issues with ours. They just work. So I have not messed with that. Sean is asking, fairly new 3D printing out of SV01, looking for a second printer. Do you have any recommendations? I'm always going to recommend Ender 3. They're good bang for the buck. And go with the 3 Pro, unless you can find a 3 for at least $50 cheaper than the Pro. And I say that because the Pro comes with the Meanwhile power supply, and you do want that. And my whole thing is, if you can get a Pro for less than it would cost you to get a regular one and add on the main well, which is about 50 bucks. I can't remember what we sell ours for. I think they're 40 or 50. The price has been all over the place with all the stuff going on right now. But let me see. I'm going to check our site right now. Yeah, they're 40 bucks. So basically, if you can get Ender 3, the non-pro, for less than it would cost to get an Ender 3with the main well, then go with the regular one. But if you can get a pro for the same price or less as a regular one plus the cost of a main well, I would go with the pro. Absolutely. So let's see here. Oh, there we go. Chat jumped. I'm going back here. John Santiago, he got some I love it. I haven't bought energy drinks in months, and I'm not even upset. My wife got me some Monster a couple weeks ago, but I like being able to mix up my stuff and not have cases of energy drinks sitting here. So I will not be buying G Fuel anymore. I can't do the grittiness after having this stuff that's not gritty. That's what sold me on it. Let's see here. Haven't had any buffering liquid food. Buffer for a second. Okay. Let's see. Justin DeBells, do you have an STL for a Creality version 2.2 dual extrusion board mount? The custom electronic closure I'm doing will need one. If you look for just like a Creality board mount, the dual extrusion board is the same bolt holes as the standard Creality board. So if you look for something that works with the Creality Melzi boards, obviously not a box one because you might not have the clearance, but they're all the Creality, well, not all the Creality boards, but the Creality version 2.x and the V11x and the V4.2.x, those all use the same bolt hole patterns. And I know there's a bunch of different brackets on Thingiverse already. So if you just look for like a Creality board mount, you're probably going to find one for that bolt hole pattern. I don't have one on hand. Like when I did Bertha, that I did an easy board. That was actually one that was branded as an SKR E3 Mini enclosure, but since the E3 Mini uses the same bolt hole pattern as the Creality boards, and our board uses the same bolt hole pattern as the Creality boards, it worked with our board too. So you can do some cross-referencing to find stuff that works correctly. So next question, Kennison, he's getting Visual Studio Code. He's getting an error to specify upload port. How do you fix this? Go to our support center or help center. I don't know why I call it support center. We call it our help center, which is support.th3dstudio.com. And there is literally a step-by-step guide on how to specify your COM port selection. So if you just search like VS Code COM port, it will take you to this article. If you're still in chat, it looks like you are. There's the direct link to that. There's a step-by-step guide. You basically got to figure out what COM port your board is on. If it's not showing up as a COM port, then you need to install drivers for it. So most of the Creality printers use the CH340 driver, and some of the older boards use the FT232R driver. Both of those drivers are available on our website as well. If you guys are ever looking for any guides, any downloads, everything that we have that's publicly available is on our help center. So that's the one, that should be the one stop you go to if you're looking for something. Go to the help center, type a keyword in that you think might pop up a relevant article. We're very good at tagging everything. And the search system we have on there is actually very good. So it can get pretty close. So as long as you hit on a keyword that's in an article, you can do that. So let's see here. K Jellos is saying, I ordered EasyBL 5015 stuff for me for our Sunlight S8. I printed the red squirrel fan shroud and it didn't fit. Now printing the short version. Or any way to tell if I just need a different size hot end? If you watch the video we did on that, we had the silver hot end, which is I guess a newer version. I ended up just putting a Creality hot end on it. You can find them relatively cheap. I think I paid like $25 for one from tinymachines3d.com. And it's been working great. My brother Doug has it. He's Top Hat Waffle in the chat. And it's been working great. That red squirrel design is really nice. So I know he said he was working on, the red squirrel guy said he was working on a redesigned one for the 5015 fan and the newer style silver hot end. I just didn't feel like waiting for him to come out with a new one, so I just swapped the hot end and went about with my day. So, hang on, chat keeps jumping on me. Let's see. So Lawrence Mania says USB Octoprint USB disconnects hours into long prints. Anyone else had that? Close going back to SD cards. Printers Ender 3 with a 427 board. Yeah, I would try a different USB cable like Nemo's saying, but one thing I do want to touch on is that you could be having issues with power draw. Those boards do backfeed or not backfeed, but they don't have proper separation of the 5-volt for the USB and the 5-volt regulator. So like the little power blocker boards we sell, those are highly recommended to go with a Creality board, just because I've seen a lot of people have their USB ports fried by those boards because they pull too much current through there. So I'll post a link to that in the chat. Do we have them? We've got 6 left in stock. I know we have more on the way because I just saw the email from Samantha going out to the guy that makes them. But I highly recommend, if you guys got like a Creality board or the Big Tree Tech SKR board, the power blockers are really nice if you're using it with your computer or Octoprint all the time, because that's going to prevent any current getting pulled over the USB. We see a lot of people having issues where the USB ports burn out on those boards because they're pulling too much current through it because they're not properly designed. So you do not need one of those with our Easy ABL board. We have proper separation, or Easy ABL board. On our Easy board, we have proper separation of the 5-volt rail for the USB port and the voltage regulator. That's why there's a jumper on our board, so you can actually select where the 5-volt power is coming from. And by default, it's going to pull it from the voltage regulator. That's why if you have our Easy board and let's say you have it connected to an Octoprint setup and you shut the power off, the LCD actually shuts off completely. Whereas on the Creality boards, they don't shut off because they're pulling power through the USB port. So, which is not good. Bennett Ozzy, can you go over enabling Easy ABL on the MKS Gen L V2? If you're using our DIY firmware for that, which we do have, I don't know if you're aware that exists, but we do have firmware specifically for that. We will be putting out more firmwares that we call the DIY firmware. And what that is firmware that's meant to be easy setup. It's still Marlin, but it kind of steps you through all the settings that you need to do, and also then sticks with our baseline defaults that we like to use in our firmware for different boards. So we have one for the MKS S Gen L right now. We have one for the Easy board as well. Let me pull up, I'll just pull it up on GitHub to show the config here. Give me 1 second here. I'm just pulling that up in a browser here so I can go over the config file really quick. It's actually pretty simple. You basically just need your offsets, and you tell it that you're using a probe, and you're off to the races. Where is Edge? I use Edge for streaming because I don't use that. I like keeping separation. You don't want random stuff popping up when you're streaming. All right, so if we look at the config files, so this is on our GitHub, but this is the config file you'll be working with. So you want to set the this is all the jumper stuff and everything. We have this preset up to work with the 2209 MKS or the Wetterots. You just got to make sure you set your jumper config. You select your LCD that you're using. But when it comes to the Easy ABL, if you scroll down, we have some sample probe mounts here that are common ones. These are all predefined. But if, let's say, you're using one that's not predefined, you can uncomment this right here, which will enable the custom probe option. You come down to the bottom here in the custom probe settings here, and you enter in your probe offsets right here. And that's all you need to do to enable Easy ABL with the MKS S Gen L V2. And that's with our firmware. If for some reason you're using standard Marlin, then you're going to want to go through the Easy ABL vanilla Marlin guide, which is also in our help center here. And this has all the steps here for the configuration.h, your probing points, setting your probe offsets, probe edge, and other just recommendations to set for the firmware. So if you are using MKS SGNL with one of the LCDs we have support for in that DIY firmware, I would highly recommend using that. It's going to take a lot of time, or take less time than doing Marlin. Marlin will take a lot more time, but it's under the DIY firmware, and you can see your MKS SGNL V2 board. So, but yeah, give that a check out if you haven't. I know most people aren't aware that we have that on the site now. Let's see here. Jonathan's asking, is Ultimaker the best program to use with the Ender 3D Pro? I'm assuming you mean Cura, and I'm assuming you mean Ender 3 Pro. A lot of people use Cura. I'm not personally a fan of it. I'm still using Simplify 3D, but I love the software. I hate the company. Their support's terrible, but the software works, so that's why we're still using it. I have been playing a lot with Idea Maker. Slicers are one of those things where everybody has their own preference, and they usually think that theirs is the best. I like S3D as a program. I don't like the company because their support's been pretty terrible, even though we have like 6 licenses or something like that. I don't know, we have a lot. And it's paid software, but I have heard a lot of positives about Idea Maker and Prusa Slicer. My recommendation would be download a bunch of them, play with them, and see which one you like and what gives you the best print quality results. So, let's see here. Niga says, what is the difference between the 2225 and the 2208? Essentially, it's just the physical package that the chip is in. They're basically the same chip. The 2208 settings in Marlin apply to the 2225s. It's just a different physical chip size, and the way the pins are laid out, the 2225 has rows of pins on the top and bottom, and it's a long rectangular package, and the 2208 is a little square that has more surface mount type, or it's not BGA, there's another term for it, but it's a square type package instead of a rectangular package with the leads. The 22.8 actually doesn't have leads on it. It's got little solder pads that then contact with your PCB for surface mount attachment. Let's see here. How do you remove VS Code? Just uninstall it from your computer. Mamadou Ba. I like saying that username. Would you recommend installing the 12864 display in the Ender 3 V2? Yes. Yes, I would. And that's what we have on ours. There's if you search in our help center, Ender 3 V2 12864, there's a full guide with links to the STL for the screen mount and a link to the video where I actually did it. I think it was on an Ask Tim stream. But yeah, you would I would recommend it. I got tired of waiting around to see if Marlin would ever have like full support for that or not. So David is asking, how can you use the filament change without turning off the runout sensor using Unified Firmware 221? You could just, sorry. Whew. If you just send an M600 to the printer while it's printing, it will initiate the filament change routine. If you're printing and you press the LCD menu and go into, I want to say, it might be on the main menu. It's been a while since I've looked at them. But there's also a change filament option right on the screen. So, let's see. Dominic looked at his printer while we were on stream. He said, I noticed my eccentric nut on my hot end wheels was just a tad loose. Tightness seems to have brought the bed back to acceptable limits. Yeah, that's a really important thing. If you guys are ever having like weird bed leveling results where it's kind of all over the place or not consistent, check your eccentric nuts. You'd be surprised that having them too loose, as it travels around, it just wobbles about. And because your probe is mounted to your hot end, if that's wobbly and not stable, it's going to influence and ruin the probe results. And that's with any probe, no matter what you have. So let's see here. I see Llama fat fingered something, but I think he said, am I going to sell the MKS SGNL? I have them on order, so yes. The V2 version. So I've been very happy with those boards. I think they're a very good budget universal board. I'm comfortable enough selling them and putting them in our shop. So they've been pretty good for a budget board. Let's see here. My Ender 3 Pro has a press-on pulleys. Does the WD-40 remove trip really work? Will the new pulley with set screws stay secure if there isn't a flat on the motor rod? Yes, I have used the WD-40 trick to get pulleys off. You just have to let it sit in there. One thing you can do is heat it up and pull the pulley off. If you've got a bearing puller, not many people do, you could do that, or just get another motor. But yeah, I've used WD-40 to get pulleys off. You just got to let it sit and soak in. The alternative is if you got a, like a propane torch, just heat it up really quick for a sec and pull it off. Heating them up does help get those pulleys off. And I've not had any issues with set screws coming loose on the flat motor rods. The pulleys that I usually use have 2 set screws, so they usually work pretty well. I've not had issues with them becoming loose, even if there's not a flat spot on the motor shaft. So if you're really paranoid about it, what you can do is take the grub screw out, put a little Loctite on there, and then tighten them in, and you should be good. You could even put it, honestly, if you really don't want it to come off, throw a little bit on the inside of the pulley before you put it onto the motor, and then tighten it down. So let's see. Sean Youth has posted a question and picture in Discord. Let's see. I'm going to go to Livestream channel. I forgot to bring it up. I'm sorry. I forgot to bring it up. Let's see here. Let's open that. Copy that image. And let's bring that up here. And let's see. Ooh. Yeah, I see that. I see what you're talking about. There was a guy in our Discord server that was trying to get a SKR14 turbo working that had this same exact issue. This normally, if you see this on your printer, it's usually a result of it not feeding the filament correctly, or you're using filament that just is out of spec, so it translates into this. It's not Z-banding, because if it's Z-banding, it would be a repetitive pattern up and down the part. This is just kind of like it's not stepping fully correctly. I don't know what electronics you're using, but I did want to point that out because he was using it, I think it was in a Sunlu S8 or some other machine, but he had the SKR14 turbo with the big Tree Tech drivers. He was having other issues with the board too, but it looked just like this. He switched over to the SGen LV2 with the MKS drivers, and it started working. So, yeah, that's kind of hard to diagnose. It's definitely not Z-banding though, so that helps narrow it down a little bit. I would look and see if your extruder is feeding consistently, if it's slipping or not, because if it's slipping, you can get some under extrusion here and there on the layers, which is then going to give you this like uneven layer stacking too. You can also try and see if your layer fan is maybe pushing too much air. Try lowering your layer fan speed down a little bit. But I would say look at the what's the word I'm looking at? Look at the extrusion for, it would be the first place I would check. See if your nozzle's clogged, make sure the extruder's feeding correctly, that kind of stuff. So you'd be surprised what a little bit of clog in the nozzle will do. You can also try up in the print temp too. I don't know where you're printing at. Let me see. Oh, there's another. He said it's coax. Yeah. So, I mean, check their filament. They're not every company can't be perfect. Check the diameter, but I'd be more inclined to say it's something on either the extruder side or the hot end side. I don't know what electronics you're using, but if you are running trinamic motors or trinamic motor drivers or stepper drivers, set your extruder motor to spread cycle, not stealth chop, because if you run it in stealth chop mode, you have less torque available to you, and that could also be causing the problem. I'll wait to see if you reply here. But in general, I've had issues in general with the Big Tree Tech TMC drivers. They just don't work correctly. You'll set it to like 800 VREF or 800 for the current, VREF current, whatever, we'll use them interchangeably here. But it's like it under extrudes, or it doesn't have enough torque. So Whereas if I set that same current setting on like an MKS TMC 2209 or a Wetterot one, 2209, 2208, those are the ones I've used, they just work. So yeah, he is saying in Discord that it's in stealth chat mode. Take it out of stealth chat mode. Put it to spread cycle. Trinamic, if you don't believe me, you don't have to take my word for it. Go look at the datasheet for the 2208s and the 2209s. They specifically state that when you're using the Trinamic boards with an extruder, or the Trinamic drivers with an extruder, you should be running it in spread cycle mode, not stealth chop. Stealth chop is not good for extruders because it's a low torque mode. That's why it's so quiet. So there are some trade-offs here. That's why we ship all of the firmwares that we have. If they're able to control the Trinamic drivers, it sets all of the E drivers to spread cycle, not stealth chop. So, and he said it is in stealth chop. So I would start there. I would change your stepping mode from stealth chop to spread cycle. That might be the entire issue right there. So, let's see here. Where were we at? Let me go back up. People chatting. There's Sean Youth. Okay, so Nadav Mavor is asking, can I install the TH30 Easy board in your ANET A8? If you change the LCD and you print a mount to put the board in there, yes, you can now with the DIY firmware. There's a DIY firmware for the Easy board. I actually did that with, if you guys remember Bertha, she's up there. I put that on my AlphaWise U10. You just got to use a compatible LCD and then have a way to mount it to the printer. So if you wanted to, yes, you could. I probably wouldn't waste an Easy board on ANET A8, to be completely honest. I would waste an MKS S-Gen LV2 on there. Those are a lot cheaper. You know, but it's up to you. You just use the DIY firmware. So a lot of people were asking that because I kept getting a lot of messages going like, well, I want to use the Easy board in this printer and that printer. And, you know, I know it's not supported, but I can get it mounted and hooked up. And I'm like, okay, so we made the DIY firmware for that. So you can use the Easy board in technically any printer as long as you have a compatible LCD and run through the setup process. And the Easy board DIY firmware also works with the Easy firmware site. So you can make all your changes to the config file on your computer, you save those changes, and you can upload that file to the Easy firmware site, and you still don't have to mess with VS Code, even if you're doing a DIY build with the Easy board. So, David's saying the problem, he had a filament change question, so he's elaborating on this. So he said the problem is when the filament change happens and the LCD prompts for the change. After purging film, I get prompted to purge more or change the runout sensor to off before more. I get the continue prompt. You have to put the filament through the sensor. You're going to keep getting prompted. If you don't put it through the sensor, you then have to turn it off. So if you tell it to go ahead and purge it out and you don't have the filament in the sensor before you have it start loading the new filament, it's going to keep prompting you. So the process for using a filament sensor should be, okay, you initiate the change, you unload the filament, you take it out of the extruder, you take it out of the filament sensor, you put the new filament in to the filament sensor, and then your extruder, and then you continue on the screen. If you don't do it in that step, it's going to think that there's no filament there and keep prompting you. So you have to put the filament through the filament sensor before you tell it to continue loading the new filament. If you don't do it in that exact direction, it's not going to work. Mac CJ is asking about the MKS Robin E3D. Thoughts as it's a drop-in for the CR10 Ender 3. I have some other MKS board in my office here from them. No, it's not. You know what? It's not the E3D. Because that one has a 256K chip on it, like the Big Tree Tech boards. So I wasn't that, but they do have the E3P, which is this one. You can see it's socketed. I have not tested this yet. I got these with the MKS S-Gen LV2 samples along with their little TFT here. I have not done anything other than power it on, and that's it. So these are another board I was looking at testing to see if they're worth doing anything with. So I do have a couple of these, but I haven't done anything with them so far. But one of the benefit is, even though they're not using the 2-ounce copper on the PCB, the one thing about going to the socketed drivers is it doesn't really matter because we're actually able to properly use a heatsink on here. And I do want to talk about this really quick because when you have a socketed stepper driver, you see there's a trinamic chip right there. Remember, they sink their heat through the bottom. This is how you properly use a heatsink with a trinamic, is you have it on the rear. So this will actually keep the driver cool. Like I said, I just got these in. I haven't messed with them. I don't really have any specific plans. I just saw it and I was like, let me get some of those on the order. I want to play with them. And that's as far as I got. It's been sitting in the box over here. So. But we'll see. I will say this: they have proper 5-volt isolation, unlike Big Tree Tech and Creality. They do actually have a jumper there to cut the 5-volt off. So already just looking at the design of the board, their E3P Robin looks a lot better designed than Creality's offerings and Big Tree Tech's offerings. So, but I haven't tested them at all. I've literally just took it out of the box and looked at it. I was like, okay, this looks halfway decent, and then I haven't had time to mess with it. So. Let's see. Stancer says, glad to hear the MKS 2209 just work, or just set of those. I have the 2209 V2s. I have tested those, and those seem to work correctly. I can't say the same about Big Tree Tech or other brands. The only other brand I can tell you that does actually work correctly is Watterott, Watterott, I think is how you spell it. Basically, those are the two I found that they actually just work correctly. So, yeah, Matt said, since I took Sim device switched from spread cycle to stealth chop, I've had noticeably more consistent extrusion, TMC 2209 in UART mode. Yes. The thing is, when you're in stealth chop on an extruder, you don't hear it skipping. So you just think everything's running correctly, but the thing is, because it's such low torque and it's so quiet, you don't really realize that it's losing steps. So yeah. If you're running a trinamic driver and you have control over the driver stepping mode, it should be in spread cycle, not stealth chop. Where's Clara? Clara is in the house. So Shenny M5 question: the TH3 texture PI plate and PETG compared to using the Creality textured glass plate, should the initial Z offset be slightly higher, lower, or the same? It's probably, well, depending on what, I don't know if you're using a probe. If you're using a probe, if it's a BL Touch, it'll probably be the same. But I would recommend running it a little higher. We have a lot of information on that product page about PETG. You don't want to run PETG too close because you can risk bonding the PETG to the plate and damaging the surface. Always, if you're airing on too close or too far, air on the side of too far. But like if you're using the EasyABL Pro, the BL Touch, your offs, it's going to detect about the same distance. So, but I would recommend just clearing your Z offset and get ready to set a new one, regardless of what you're using. If you're manually leveling your bed, then go ahead and manually level it before you start printing and give yourself a little more wiggle room. So, but let's see here. Any TH3D products on the way for the Ender 6? This week I am starting the Ender 6 conversion here. I've shown this off a couple of times, but we'll be starting that this week. Yeah. Let's see here. Clara! She's out here now. Do you want this? There she is. Oh, we're working on left. Do we know left? Have we figured that out yet? Let's see. Come here. Come here. Left. No, that's... I guess there's not really much for... No, you can't take that. Come on, left. Nope. That's not going to work here. I don't have room. We're trying to teach her, like, when we go, tell her to go left, she spins left. But we'll just do the old trick. Can you sit? Speak. Give me a shake. Yeah. There you go. Good girl. Anyways, Let's see here. Is the form closed? No, the giveaway form is open. I definitely remembered that today. And I know I saw people entering, what's it called? Entering in results. So if you guys are showing that it's still not available, try clearing your browser cache. So, oh God, my mom's in here. Hello, mother. Karen. My mom's name is actually Karen, which is unfortunate given the meme. Let's see. All right, where are we at here? Edmund from Hell. I like that name. Mustang Ender 5 upgrade TMC 2130 on a SKR 14 Turbo. One, get rid of those 2130s. Those are really old at this point. They do not work as well as the 2208s or 2209s. I would highly recommend, if you're going through the trouble of building the system, spring for the 2208s at the very least, or 2209s. Yeah. You're going to want to use also standard Marlin for that. Marlin 2.0. marlinfw.org is the website. Let's see here. Yeah, Joseph thinks this screen is the most limiting thing about the Ender 6. I would agree. I would agree. Yeah, the giveaway form is open. So, bubbles under his build, Ultra Proxy, he's got bubbles under his build deck. How do you get them out? Well, since it's already down, the only thing you can do is take a pin and kind of pop them, so to speak, and then force the air towards where you poked it. And then if there is like a ridge, you have to like kind of smooth it out with some light grit sandpaper or something. But that's about it. Let's see here. Frames dropping here. Yeah, I'm watching it. I'm showing 23% of the frames got dropped going out here. So, but I don't see any other questions. Let me go back and see if I missed anything. You guys are actually quite quiet today. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Alicia says, I haven't been able to resolve filament stuck in my i3P printer. I'm assuming it's monoprice. Have you experienced this? How would you take apart the extruder on this printer? The filament does not want to go through. It depends on where it's stuck. If it's stuck in, well, I will just go through taking it all apart. So you have your extruder where you actually feed the plastic in. And then you probably, there's a lot of monoprice printers. Some are direct drive, some are Bowden. If it's Bowden, you want to take the tube out at both ends, extruder in the hot end, clear out as much filament as you can. And then once you have that cleared out, you want to see if you can then feed filament in directly from above, is usually what I'll do, like above the hot end, all the way down into the hot end. If it's a direct drive printer, you're probably going to need to take it apart quite a bit and then see if you can push through any other filament once it's hot. It's really hard to tell depending on what machine you have. The i3P, which is Monoprice's branding, they've got a lot of different machines, and some are Bowden, some are direct drive. It really depends. But basically, you want to try to remove as much filament as you can. Heat it up. One of the things I'd recommend doing, if you can't push anything through it, start by using one of those little nozzle needles. We do carry those in our maintenance kit. And then see if you can get anything to go through there. You have to do it when it's hot. So you would heat up the hot end and then shove the needle up into it. And that needle is the same diameter as a nozzle. You kind of run it around in there. So like up and down, kind of like angle it a little bit on either side and break it loose and then see if you can push filament through. And this is all done while it's hot. So just be careful because it's obviously very, very warm. They're a couple hundred C depending on what you have it set to. So, but that's usually what I start. If I have a failure to feed where I can't get anything through the nozzle, I'll go ahead and start out with those needles. I'll clear out as much as I can, see if I can get the needle up in there. If I can, then I'll push the filament back through and see if I can get anything out of it. If I can't, or let's say it goes through and then it clogs again, you might just have too much stuff in there, and at that point I would replace the nozzle with a new one, because you could just have just too much stuff caked up in the nozzle, and it's just going to keep breaking loose and clogging up the nozzle. You could go over and over and over, putting the nozzle needle through it, clearing it out, pushing it through, it stops getting cleared out, push it through. But that could take a long time depending on how much stuff is built up in there. One way to avoid that in the future, if that's the case where it's just like caked up in there, is don't leave your nozzle heated for extended periods of time and it's not printing. And also don't use low quality cheap filament, because a lot of the cheaper filaments I have seen where they have contaminants in them, and those contaminants then get clogged up in the nozzle. So, but yeah. Let's see here. Dave's asking about the filament sensor port. The filament sensor port works with our easy out sensors, on the easy board, the easy out sensors and the Creality sensors. I have not tested it with their optical sensors because our board doesn't fit in any of the printers with the optical sensors. I think the only one that uses an optical sensor from Creality is, it's either the Ender 3 V2 or the CR6. I think it's the CR6. I'm looking at the CR6 right now. I'm pretty sure the CR6 is the optical, which I have not messed with. And our board doesn't fit into that one anyways. Let's see here. Alan Kilgore says he installed EasyABL over the weekend with his Duet 2 Wi-Fi. Had an issue with consistent repeatable results using the Z probe connector. Instead, I used the Z end stop connector. Now it works great. That's interesting because I'm running mine on the Z probe connector and it's been fine. Maybe you have an issue with the connector on your board, but it's still working. I've used it a couple times since I've upgraded it. So, but we are getting towards the end of the stream, so I'm going to wrap this up in a sec here. Let me just see what else, what other people are saying here. I'm going to put this in here as the cutoff, and let's see here. I'll do one more plug for the giveaway. Let's see. He said he posted a thing. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're showing there, David. I mean that looks like you put the Creality stop connector into a different, or the Creality sensor board into another connector. If that's not the switch type sensor, then I have not tested anything other than Creality's switch type sensor and our easy out sensor with the board. So maybe you have, if you're not using one of those type of sensors where it's just a micro switch, then you could be having issues. So, and don't mix and match the cable and the pinouts between sensor brands. So if you're using an easy out sensor, use it with the cable that came with the easy out. If you're using a Creality sensor, use it with the cable that came with the Creality. If you mix and match them, things will not work and you could short the board out, because there are differences in the wiring between the TH3D sensor and the Creality sensor. That's why we have two different pictures in the guide showing where to connect them and how to connect them. Paul Gore's asking how the Ender 6 is holding / doing up. I have not done anything with it aside from the review, because I'm going to be putting this on it and then I'm going to start using it. I don't like the screen. So Andrew Famel, yeah, the 2130. There's a reason you got them for free. The 2130s came out after the 2100s, and the 2130s are 2100s with UART support. The problem is that the Stealth Chop version, which is the original one that's on the 2130s, is vastly inferior to the new one that's on the 2208s and the 2209s. So whatever you can get for cheaper, 2208 or 2209, they basically do the same thing. The only difference is the 2209 has a little bit higher current output, which is useless on the machines that we're putting these on unless you're actually driving huge motors. And they support the sensorless homing, which I don't recommend you use. I've had issues with the sensorless homing where it just doesn't work, or it false triggers and you have to play with the values. It's just kind of annoying. Michael Mearsman is asking, do you have any experience with the Magna printers? I have not. I have not. I don't even think they've reached out to us. I haven't looked into them. We've got enough machines here right now. So I do have quite a few other machines that we need to get reviews on. I got the Solvol SV03 in. It's sitting in a box right there. I've got the Ender 3 Max that we have to do. Both of those will be ones we'll be doing firmware for, and I should be able to get the easy board on those as well. So, Jason said he picked up an Ender 6 for $225. I never got it for his birthday. I thought it would be fully assembled. He didn't want to deal with it. That's good price. Yeah, $225 for an Ender 6 is a good deal. I think we paid like $550 for that. And then the last question here, right before the cutoff, is from Mike. What brand of filament do I use the most? I use coax. If you guys notice on our website, there's a filament drop down now on the main site, not on the help center. And if you hover over that, you'll see Atomic made in the USA and Coax made in the USA. Those are the two brands we use the most here. Coax is like our go-to for, especially with our bulk stuff, and Atomic I buy when there's not a color or material type or combination of color and material type that Coax has. So I go to Coax first, and then I'll go to Atomic second. They're both made in the US. They're both very good quality, and they're consistent. They're worth paying the couple extra bucks a roll more because they're consistent. I get filament from them, I put in the printers, and I know how it's going to print. So, but we are coming up on the 1 hour mark, so make sure you guys enter the giveaway because I'm going to shut that off in a second here. I'm going to see if there's any other quick questions here after the cutoff. It's been pretty light today. But let's see here. Is there anything else that's worth answering here? Not much. So, but anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this little Ask Tim. We do these every Monday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. The only exception will be next Monday, the 22nd. That will be on the 23rd because, like I said, we'll be heading back from a trip like Samantha and I. Everything else will be running here normally. Aaron's actually going to be staying here to keep an eye on things, so... But, yeah, so the Mondays and Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Central Time, except for next Monday. That will be done on the 23rd, which is Tuesday. And we will have a puppy then. And I will make sure to have the puppy on stream so you guys can all see his cute little face. So, anyways, I appreciate everybody stop by. I hope you guys learned something. As always, if you guys want to support the channel and the work we do here and also pick up some awesome upgrades for your printer, head over to th3dstore.com. And also, if you guys are ever looking for, if you have a question or you're looking for installation documentation or troubleshooting, make sure to check out our help center at support.th3dstudio.com. And we also have other communities set up, Facebook groups, Discord server, MeWe groups. We have a Telegram channel if you want to subscribe to that for company updates, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all the networks out there. But anyways, hope to see you guys around, and I'll catch you on the next stream. As always, happy printing.